Being that you consider yourself a comedian first, um, what are your thoughts on this Dave Chappelle situation?
Um, Jemele, why are you just trying to get me in trouble?
I promise you, I'm
Um,
not. But Amanda, the problem is, Amanda, you tell the truth, and I sort of gravitate toward people who tell the truth. So I know that you probably have some thoughts.
I do. Of course, I have thoughts. I always have
You have thoughts.
thoughts.
You have thoughts.
Okay. We have to look at it from a macro view. And the macro is that our community as Black people continues to disassociate ourselves in a large way from the LGBTQIA plus members of our community. So we have to acknowledge the truth of that first and foremost. Then we have to acknowledge our unique privileges and understanding that even as Black folks who are not privileged in very clear ways as it relates to white supremacy, as it relates to the variance in our melanin, as it relates to police brutality, even in the realness of that, if you are a cisgendered Black person that is also a heterosexual, you do exist in a certain particular place of privilege. Because at the end of the day, the world is set up for you by and large. And when I say cisgendered heterosexual, I mean you were born with female or male body. If you were born with female body parts and you identify as a woman and you date folks that are cisgendered men. I have to say it macro in that way because when we realize, when we acknowledge all of those things, we then understand how our words show up. And it is, so I've been corrected many a time by folks who are like, you're a colorist, you're a colorist, you're a colorist, because folks didn't feel like I talked enough about having light skin privilege. And though I am not a colorist in any shape, way, or form, I have become a lot more conscious about the fact that there's certain conversations where I have to acknowledge that, because in acknowledging it, I am doing the necessary work to dismantle it.
As you did in this conversation, because you were like, as a privileged light-skinned woman, you did that earlier in this podcast.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jemele. So when Dave, as a straight Black heterosexual man, speaks about a community that he is not a part of in a way that they have deemed hurtful, I believe that that's a choice that is not I believe that's an insensitive choice. I believe that's an insensitive choice. And I don't think it has anything to do with comedy. I think a lot of us say it's comedy, it's just making jokes, until the joke's about us. And I think we have to be honest with ourselves about the fact that we think certain communities don't matter. And so if the joke's about them, who cares? I think there's also a certain false equivalency made about the LGBTQIA plus, about that group's ability to access advancement in our community. I mean, in our society, and Black people's ability to access advancement. I think there's a false equivalency made there. But there is intersectionality. And I think a lot of times we just really, we overlook that. You cannot talk about the LGBTQIA plus community without talking about Black people. Because there are members of Black people that are part of that community. The same way there are racist people that are a member of that community. You know, there's no real there's no real just like black and white to all of this. There's right and wrong. And I felt, and I hate that I even have to make this disclaimer, but I am a Dave Chappelle fan. Like Dave Chappelle has 1000% affected my growth as a comedian. You know, I felt a certain level of affirming when Dave told me I loved your special. As a, I wouldn't necessarily consider myself a peer, but I would say I'm a colleague since we're both in the same field. I feel like that was a choice that he made from less that I feel like that wasn't a choice that he made from a place of creativity. And you know, the goal ends up being, how do I get people to talk? You know, that's what comedians end up doing, make people laugh, make people think. I think it gets dangerous though when we even inadvertently affirm folks' prejudices.
Yeah, it was tough to see some of the dialogue because it was a whole lot of cis hetero people chiming in and telling a community how they should feel about something. And I'm like, we kind of hate it when they do that to us.
Yeah.
We don't like it. And here we go being like, oh, well, you should just take it as a joke. And I'm like, I promise you, if there is a joke made about our community from somebody white, we gonna light their ass up, and it's gonna be what it is. So
that's where the conflation to me was of the idea that LGBTQIA plus is synonymous with whiteness. So right. I feel like there were people that were saying that as if they were talking to a white sector of community, and they're not. The LGBTQIA plus community, first of all, Black trans folks are the ones getting the most violence in that community. They have the least access to advancement. They are the ones suffering the most. And by the way, they're still at the hands of a racist government. They're still at the hands of police brutality. It's, and I say this in my special, like, Black folks and Black gay folks are dealing with things from a multitude of sides in terms of oppression. And I just think as a community, it's like, we need to be embracing. It's like, what do they say? If no one is free if we ain't all free, like, and so I feel very earnest about that. And I had to talk with my homeboy who's a comic, and I was really proud of him for being able to like really hear me and really see like, oh, he was like, oh shit, I've been trashed this whole time. Because he was like, aha moment. He was like, yo, I didn't even realize that, like, even though I'm a Black man, like I still have a certain level of privilege just by the fact that I'm a straight Black man. And he had like a real epiphany. It was like, oh shit. And it changed how he talked about it in his stand-up. And he went and talked about it in his stand-up, but it changed how he talked about it. And the way that he talked about it, he sent me the set, and he sent me the bit that he was working on. And I was so proud. I was so proud because it's like, I really do feel like journalists like yourself and comedians, we're like the last bastion of truth, of like real raw truth that can like cut through. So, you know, you got to think about what you're saying.
Because as Black women, we often try to have this conversation with Black men, right? But we try to explain to them like, yes, we know you are considered a threat in America. Yes, we know what the police will do to you. Yes, we know about systemic and racial oppression you face. You still got dick privilege. I don't got that. Okay?
I got it.
I don't have it. I don't have it.
I don't have it.
Privilege. It's like,
and they're like, but, and there's like, no
but.
But the ones who get it are like, oh, that's why I need to look out for y'all.
Yes, this is why.
Nailed it.